Welcome. I'm so excited to talk about one of my very favorite things. It is integration. It's using the feminine for growth and expansion. It's explanation of what using the feminine for growth and expansion means. And for me and so many other women that I've mentored and taught and facilitated for, it's been the missing piece that makes all the work that they've done, all of the spirituality and foundation all fit together to actually make your life feel better instead of just knowing more and working harder to change the experience of how you move through your life and how it feels and the confidence and the clarity and the self-trust and the change in relationships that can happen just from putting all of these blocks together in a certain way and learning a few more. So that's where we're headed in this little video podcast, wherever you're listening. So first of all, I want to talk about where a lot of the women that I work with are starting from. And it's a place that was very familiar to me. And it's a place of deep desire for growth and a deep belief that there is something better than feeling stressed and burnt out and insecure and disconnected and unsure all the time. And for a lot of people in the world, they just stay busy so that you don't really have to grapple with that being the reality of our lives. And for so many things, we think like, well, pretty soon it will get better. And despite all the work that I was doing, all the books I was reading and podcasts and things that I was learning, things weren't necessarily feeling better. And there was all of this accumulated into a lot of knowledge and understanding and growth. But there was a few key pieces that really made the big difference for me. And that in conjunction with all of the learning that I have done since then that have changed so much for me. I feel like myself personally, I feel like a before and after story in so many ways. I used to spend so much of my time just feeling insecure about myself. And there's an element of grief to that for me now, where I think about how much bandwidth, how much potential, how much creative energy I wasted in that space. But can't know something till we know it. And those years of struggle brought me here in a position where I can help women, where me talking to you here was not necessarily like the pick of what I wanted to do, but it's the call that I hear all the time because I know that there is a better way to be. And when I get to see such transformative results, so much feedback and testimonials about the difference that this makes for people, this work, this process, this approach, then I can't not share. And so I want to talk about this to you today, but also talk about the opportunities that I'm offering right now for this transformation for yourself, and not over a 10-year period like it took me, but over the period of 4 months that you can take in so many of the tools and perspectives and some of the deep work that I spent months and months into for myself, that you can go through it a little more quickly and feel that transformation that you can continue to deepen and work through yourself. So not only will we work together with individual coaching and community and a structure and framework and sequence that has proven to really work, but also the work doesn't end for you there in a really hopeful way. My goal is for you to not need me. And I see myself here as a guide on the side that's leading you home to yourself. So I want to talk a little bit about this, but then also the opportunities, and that's the beginnings of some of them. So My story, I have talked a lot about, kind of began in my body, and then I realized how much of my life was spent not knowing the voice of my own soul, or not understanding all the ways I could be in the world. A lot of us have this really narrow energetic range of who we think we can be. We really label ourselves as, like, for me, it was like, well, I'm the smart one, but I'm insecure, I'm kind of nerdy, and people don't want to be my friend, and my body's the worst. And that's kind of who I planned on being in a lot of ways. And for other people, it might just be like, oh, I'm the one that like takes care of everybody, or I'm the anxious one. Whatever it is, we think that we are restricted to these ideas that we have of ourselves. And then every once in a while, we catch these glimpses internally of who we hope that maybe we could be. Or we see it in other people. We think, like, wow, what would it be like to move through the world like that? To be able to say no to people, or to be unapologetic about who I am, or to like to put my art out into the world, or to just like relax and not feel like I have to be perfect all the time. Like, what would that feel like? And spoiler alert, all of those things that we see in other people or hope for ourselves are available to us. And for me, I really wanted to be a person who could be comfortable in their body, who could be confident, who could risk people being mad or disagreeing with me. Um, I wanted to be a person who didn't do had to have everything perfect all the time. Um, I wanted to be someone maybe that could be vulnerable, that could share, that could didn't necessarily just take in everyone else's stories. And chances are, if you are like a lot of women that I have worked with, you also have this distant hope that maybe there might be a way to not feel stressed, like you're keeping the whole world together, that everything depends on you, that you feel burnt out. That was probably not the feeling that you dreamed for your life. Think about teenage you and where she thought she would be by now. And I'm sure you have learned so many beautiful, wonderful lessons about yourself. But teenage you probably hoped that you would feel a little more comfortable in your life by this point, and a little more strongly confident in listening to yourself, that your relationships would be more vibrant and alive. And when we can work through a lot of the process that we work through in Homefires Sól, of coming back to ourselves and the way we see our relationships, what we believe that we can gift into them, how we think we can be, then even those things can transform. So much of the internal work can absolutely transform the external circumstances. And some women I work with come in and they're like, I have everything that I thought I wanted in my life. I have the husband and the kids, and we have a nice house, and I don't know why my life doesn't feel how I dreamed it would be. And sometimes they even are afraid of doing this deep inquiry work, that at some point they are just going to have to burn it all to the ground and start again. And that is not the case. Sometimes these small internal changes completely transform how we feel in our life, that we are only a few degrees off, that we've actually done amazingly well at creating this space, this life for ourselves. And a lot of the key here is the feminine. And what I mean by that is not a classical idea of like feminine, masculine, men and women. We all have these dual energies inside of us. And in other philosophies, frames of thought, they can be looked at as like yin and yang, as Shakti and Shiva, like masculine and feminine gods. they can also maybe be looked at as like the warrior and the lover. We have all of it. But the terminology that flows most naturally for me is masculine and feminine. And as we start to talk about this, which I will probably be talking about more in future podcast videos, because it's kind of like the big piece that transformed a lot of the work for me. I don't mean to be essentializing any genders, because I think that as a woman, you can be whatever expression of that you want to be. This is not to be restrictive or prescriptive. But for me, expressing these dual energies in this way makes the most sense. And I can feel when I'm functioning in either of them. And the whole game is to broaden this range of what we can draw on, what we can become, and also expand our understanding into a framework that hasn't been looked at through much of history. And there's such an exciting time right now of the feminine just rising in the world, that we are seeing like discontent in the most beautiful way of looking at partnership and valuing things equally, and looking at really strong, amazing women leaders in the world. And the whole world, I think, is ripe for this rising. And as we learn to integrate it, to be it, to use it, then we can transform things for ourselves, for the people around us, and for the ways of being available to people in the future. Maybe you have daughters and your work here heals their generation. Maybe some of the patterns of overworking, overfunctioning, burnout, emptying out for everybody else, maybe that ends with you, so that the next generation doesn't have to feel like that. And how much work and worth and investment and drive and struggle is that worth to stop some of those patterns here of settling for less than your worth, of not feeling like you're good enough, not feeling like you deserve all the big, beautiful things that sometimes you think about. What if you could stop and have that end with you? I think a lot of times, I think of the things that I've spent money on when I have been chasing a feeling, whether that is like clothes or the perfect shade of lipstick of the, I don't know, 200 lipsticks I bought over my life and literally never worn. Most of that really wasn't about the thing. It was about the feeling. It was about feeling different in my life. And when I think about what I have invested in that really has changed so much, it has been in courses, in mentorship, in learning a faster way to approach the person I dreamed I could become. And that's always a moving target, because then there's a next iteration, and that is beautiful and expansive. Okay, back to the masculine and the feminine. Most of how I spent my life, I read so many like coaching books, high performance sports books, sports psychology books, therapy books, mindset, leadership. Like, I've been in this for a while. Something that my dad taught me early in my life was, he called it Automobile University, and it was audiobooks in the car. I think that's from Zig Ziglar. See, I know about Zig Ziglar because like I was doing this. High school Christy was a personal growth junkie. Very true. So I was always trying to be more efficient, productive, accomplish things, accomplish goals. And for all of that time, there was a lot of things that I did or achieved that people thought were like pretty good. Like, I had really high marks in high school. I did well in university. I got into programs. I got a master's degree. And through all of that, whatever that was, whatever I was doing, I always felt like a failure. And I thought like, but if they knew how much I don't do, they wouldn't think that I was that great. If people knew how many goals I had written monthly in my planner that never got accomplished, um, they'd know that actually I've done a few things, but really I suck. And so much of my lack of confidence came from that too. And also, there was this continual pressure, which is not unique to me. And I think in some ways this is changing a little bit, which would be amazing. But there was this constant pressure for my body to look a certain way. And I think a lot of us that have hit their 30 somethings look back at their teenage self and is like, you were doing really well. I wish you weren't so sad. Um, but I had never had the experience of being in my body. My body was always something I thought about how it appeared, about how it must look to everybody else, about what people must notice about it. And so all of this combined, there was a few years that I just took a break. And I've talked about this in podcast episodes before about goal setting, where I really did talk about kind of the masculine and the feminine, but without those terms. So over the last few years, it's been like the deep quest of mine to realize that most of what we've been taught, what we've learned, who has taught us, has been from a really masculine framework. And by masculine in this sense, I mean in the realm of the mind, consciousness, action-oriented, linear path. And the feminine takes the opposite form of that. The feminine is bottom up, like connecting in. It's using the wisdom of our body. It's connecting into our body as a tool for enlightenment, not something that's keeping us from that. It's questioning the idea of enlightenment at all. It's questioning the idea that we always need to have a destination and like a 5-step process. The feminine asks us to look at what we are experiencing now, how deeply we are taking in our experience, how much we can open to life, how much we can open to our emotions and use them for good. And through most of our lives, most of us women, especially like if you happen to be like a big feeling person, like poetry and deep lyrics and feels like you just had too much for really anyone to understand. That always felt like a flaw to me, something I wanted to turn off. And it took me really working into this to see that it was such a gift. Because the breadth of those emotions, the volume now through the tools of embodiment, of like self-soothing, of coming back to myself, I can use those big emotions to inquire what's underneath that. What is the wisdom that's trying to arise? How can I use that? Looking even at the experience of my life through like, how does my body feel in this moment? How am I reacting? And instead of just changing at the action level, working and looking more at tools that change what I believe about myself. And for me, these tools are a lot of working through the body. So there are tools to, when we're triggered, when we have those kind of emotions that take us outside of ourselves, having the tools to come back down to a more rational and constructive place, to look what's happening, to look where the opportunity is to transform and inquire into that, the inquiry skills to look at that, and also to look at the deep wisdom that my body is offering. So what does it need right now? What does it deeply need? And how can I just give that permission? Whether that's vegetables or a run or a nap or whatever it is, we get stuck in like how we think things have to be, and we forget to check in with our primary tool of intuition, of inspiration, of how we take the world in and how we process um, the voice of our own soul through our body. And changing those identity level things through, for me, that was a lot of EFT, emotional freedom techniques, or tapping to release a lot of the wounds, the all the stories that I carried from the past, all the things that I hung on to that we all pick up through our childhood, all those moments where we felt small and not good enough or too much or so flawed, to transmute and release those. AIT, to advanced integrative therapy, to really look at like those deep questions of identity and start to shift those into a really upgraded version. And breath work to feel and move things in the level of the body, in the level of the tissues, to transform trauma, like generational or micro traumas in our lives, or even these things that we didn't even notice, these limiting beliefs that we didn't even notice we had, to move those at the level of the body. And then our actions are different. And our actions are different with so much less efforting. And that is the key. Sometimes we need to tap into our inner masculine and get things done and have things on time and deadlines. And sometimes we need to tap into that place that's deeper and wiser, that sometimes works in stillness, in being, and move through there. And I'm like actually sincerely left-handed, so I'll use my metaphor in this way. But for so much of my life, I've been working through the masculine solely. And the whole world is rigged for us to believe that we have to do it that way, that we need to, all the advice that we've taken really has been from men to men, like we didn't even know there was another way. And also there's kind of like a societal conspiracy, though I don't even know how conscious that is, and that keeps us outside of our true power as women, which power can look like a variety of forms, whether that's just like love or discontent or anger or whatever form that takes, achievement, getting things done, revolution, whatever it is. There is so much motivation to keep women outside of that. Because oftentimes, and we really saw this through COVID, oftentimes women are asked to bear the bulk of the labor of society, that they do so much unpaid, unthanked, keeping the world afloat, whether that's in families or workplaces or whatever it is. So keeping women outside of themselves also makes them like buy more stuff. So if you are, lights are starting to turn on, that this is how you have been functioning, there are forces that have been keeping you there. But there is a way to return. There is a way that you can do what is aligned for you, that you can live in like deep, fulfilled service to those around you, instead of just feeling like you have to say yes to everything. Instead of having a strategy for boundaries, the feminine changes how we look at all of that, how we look at our own energy, how we look at our contribution to the world. And then those boundaries are cleaner. They're not as hard to set. We don't have to think about them so much. And self-care doesn't just seem like another thing to add onto your list, another thing you should be doing, or something that you collapse into in complete burnout. The maintenance of your own soul looks like care and stewardship, your main stewardship, not like a chore, not like you are stealing time and energy from other people. So if this hasn't been your experience yet, it can be. It can be. And everything that you've learned, all the foundations, all of this spirituality, faith that you have been in, the mindset, the strategy that you have taken in, the ways that you have already worked into seeing the world, all the introspection that you've done till now can all be rocket fuel for where you can go in such a short amount of time. The last round of Homefires Sól was just 3 months, and it was so beautiful to read the results of that. Of people who were already amazing, already amazing. Let me tell you something. Whatever capacity we work together in, whether that's just you accessing my free meditations, or you attend a workshop sometimes, or if you commit to one of the longer programs, the best people are here. I'm not joking. We hang out together in small communities, workshops, course groups, whatever that is, and man, the women are amazing. So they already arrived amazing. And some of my job as a facilitator is just to remind you that you already are, but also help you see the limitations that you are bringing to your current reality that aren't necessarily true. And the amazing thing in just these 3 months together was reading the testimonials about how their lives had already felt completely transformed in the best way, in the way that they were hoping for, in a way of like how they felt in their lives and how they thought about the world and what that would look like going forward. One of the common discussions was how it felt like drinking from a fire hose, because we're moving through so much so quickly. And that doesn't mean it needs to take a lot of your time, okay? This is not a time intensive program, but it is a deep transformative program. It's kind of like when you go to get a massage. So for me, I think if I'm here, I'm spending an hour here, like go in deep, even when it hurts, like just get it done. Let's just like use our time here. And I understand that some people go there and they're like, I just kind of want to feel good. That's not what we're doing in Sól. In Sól, we go deep into the tissues. We do the work. We might be there the same amount of time on that massage table, an hour, but we are in the deep tissues where it's going to be uncomfortable, but it's going to change everything. So hearing those results makes me come here to tell you about it, because it is my deep, unexpected passion to share this work with other women, because I think that is the most potentially transformative force in the entire world. That doesn't just transform you, that changes everybody. And now that I can see the world in such a different way, it breaks my heart to see women so unfulfilled and so pressured to be different, that feel like they are doing so much and never enjoying the being of their lives, never really being able to see how amazing they are at their core, at their essence, but also never feeling like they're doing enough. Always this pressure to do more. And when we look at the being piece of this, not just the doing piece of our lives, and we can work through all the blocks that we've built up to understanding the splendor of our own essence, then you can be magical and you can do magic things, because that's who you already are. And it's my deep belief that you don't need me to do this, but it's also my deep belief that I can help you do it faster. And I can guide you through corners and pathways. We can look at the specifics of your life and see what applications that you are missing, see what reminders you need, see how you can return to who you are more quickly, and then do your work in the world. And then instead of a decade, we are 4 months into the future and you feel like lit up and confident. All these things that you like hoped that maybe you could be, you actually are being them, that you see your relationships in a completely different way. That is one of the biggest gifts of this work, is that your relationships will change in the best way. That it won't just be that you are keeping everything together and kind of like mothering your partner, or like dating and not feeling confident, and having so much sticky energy with parents and family members and friends or whatever. Doing this work will transform the experience of other people in being around you. So if you are worried about taking resources, energy from your family, from the people in your life, and bringing it to this work, I promise you, and there are testimonials that will support this, that this is the best gift you can give those people. Because you can unlock something inside of you and then use that key to unlock other people. If you are looking for more patience and presence, more just sheer volume of like love and generosity, more like magic and passion, more patience and acceptance, whatever that is, we mine the depths of our blocks, our experiences to unlock that. And then you bring that to the people around you. So with our time together, we will move through examining your relationship with the divine, the spirituality that you have brought with you already. And with previous programs and the last round of Soul, we had ranges from like deeply orthodox faith, organized religious faith, to like, I think there's something good in the universe and I feel it in nature. At no point in this am I asking or suggesting you to conform to anything here. I am guiding you deeper into yourself. That so much of this process is figuring out what you are consciously, unconsciously carrying and what you want to keep carrying. And looking at it through that consciousness, then you can make a choice of like, this serves me, this is beautiful, this I'm taking, this I picked up from my parents and I love it and I'm taking it. And this, I don't even know where it came from, but it's not mine and I'm putting it down because I'm only carrying the expectations, the structures, the frameworks that serve me now. And putting down so much of that will release and free up so much of your energy. But that range, that whole range of how you might show up is beautiful, and you get to decide for you where you live. We will go through that. We will go through your relationship with your body and how that can be a tool to liberation. Even if that's not a thing that you think you have, you are not accessing all of the power available to you there. And we will work through that. We will look at forgiveness, forgiving yourself, and actually moving that forgiveness through your system and releasing it. So we do a lot of inquiry and energy work with that. Also, forgiveness from people in your life, maybe partnerships, past relationships, parents, whatever that, institutions, situations, and moving that so that we can look at our real lives now with more clarity, with more actual understanding and choice and sovereignty. We will look at relationships at a more deeper level into the masculine and feminine, how you can utilize that polarity in your relationships, how all of your relationships can be sacred containers for your own growth and expansion. We will look at triggers, at developing your own practices of these energy tools, of meditation, of visualization. Every week we have a video lesson. So that ranges from like 20 to, I think there were some ones that were like 45 minutes. And then there are tools throughout your week. So there is no order to those practices. It's up to you. And I'm never checking your homework. So there will be inquiry questions, a lot of journaling, meditations or visualizations, energetic tools that we all go through together that lead you deeper and through the topic for the week. And then we also meet together for an hour once a week. And this is like a magic. Before, I had like real lone wolf ideas about myself, especially with women. I was like, that's not really my jam. I don't need a lot of like girlfriends and stuff. And let me tell you, all of the growth, the major risks that I have taken in my life have been springboarded from the community of women that I have in my life. And maybe you have some of those where you can just collapse into what is actually going on for you, that you can talk about those really deep things of life, but maybe you don't. But the sisters, the women in your soul circle, in Homefires in general, will be a balm and a circle and a safe space. So in those spaces, women biologically heal in community. We process cortisol, our stress hormone, through oxytocin when we are together, when we are bonding with people. And so those weekly circles together are where we bring what's come up from the week, because there is a lot of this work is designed for a lot to come up. And so this is where we can verbally process together. And there is sometimes tears and there is sometimes laughter, and all of it's beautiful. And it's really intentionally a part of this program to aid in your processing, in your support, in moving through this in a really safe and supported way. And so that's also the time where we can be together, but also I can offer specifics to your situation and guide you through more deeply in and out of what we're going through. And oftentimes we kind of stick to our topic for the week, but also we don't. Everything that's coming up for you is perfect and on time, and we bring it here together. So the time commitment here is not crazy, but it is rigorous enough to remind you that you have committed here. Financially, with your time, you have committed to next level you. And what would that feel like through your body? To commit to this version of you that maybe seems fuzzy and almost impossible. How would it feel to be the kind of woman who invested in herself, who invested in her growth, who had confidence that she could make that work, who had confidence that she could actually be the gift. She didn't need more stuff, things for other people, for herself. That all of our time here, we're just sinking more deeply into our own souls. So what would be more worth the investment of our resources? At the end of all of this, too, because the investment is substantial for a really intentional purpose, because I want us to show up and commit. That was one thing that I learned about myself in committing to programs, to coaching, was that I always kind of thought that I was a person who was like, well, I sort of do things, I guess. But I noticed that when I invested in that way, I was like, no, I'm a person that shows up when I have invested and committed in this way to be here. I show up for the work. And I want to offer you that same opportunity to show up for yourself and start to change who you believe you are and who you can become right in the beginning. And at the end of all of our time together, if you feel like this has not been true for you and you have done all the work, and we can show, I will refund you all of your money if this has not provided the transformation that you were looking for. That's how confident I am in this work that we can do together and the potential it has for such far-reaching effects. So I just want to leave this here as an offer, as a gift, as an invitation to step into this together. That there are already women that have integrated and transformed, and we can make an amazing difference in the world. And I am only here on this video, which actually kind of used to be the nightmare of my life. Even when I started feeling like this deep call, it's like, Chrissy, you need to be teaching this. I thought about being on video and I wanted to barf all the time. I was like, I'm not a person that can do that. I'm not a person that can be on my Instagram stories. I'm not a person that can film themselves. And sometimes those ideas that we have about ourselves that we can work through and transform are just little things that are keeping us from the big service in the world. Even offering, like I remember the first time that I started recording meditations and I was terrified and shaking. And when I pressed publish to release them, I just thought I was going to throw up. And I know now that sometimes we are asked to follow that feeling because there is amazing service and transformation on the other side of that. So I want to offer you an energetic tool right now to help you make this decision if you are considering being part of Soul. And that is accessing the wisdom of your body. So we can make up a lot of stories and we can basically justify mentally just in either way. We can rig those pros and cons lists. And sometimes the big things in our lives don't make pros and cons sense. And that's often for myself, for so many people that I've talked to, they were like, oh, I just knew, even though it didn't make any sense at all. And that's why I knew that I really had to do it, because it really didn't make sense up here. And you might be tempted right now to think like, well, someday I will do this. Someday, Chrissy, I will be a part of this. But I would like you to inquire into yourself of which part of you is offering that delay, which part of you is offering that excuse to stay in familiar territory just as you are. So when you think and you tune deeply into your body, let your eyes close, let your belly get soft, let your awareness just drop down into your gut, into your low belly, to your heart. And you think about joining Homefires Sól, you think about joining us in this work together. How does that feel? Did you feel a moment of expansion, of openness? Because even if that was there, followed by some contraction, the openness is the truth. The contraction comes when we think of all the complications, all the reasons why not, when our ego kicks in and tells us all the information that will just keep us safe and the same. That's our ego's job. It's not ego in the sense of like inflated and conceited. Our ego's job is to keep everything at the status quo and to keep us really safe. But that is not where growth happens. That is instinct. That is our animal biology. But the amazing miracle of our consciousness is that we can transcend that. And we can do things that are scary, that are expansive, that change the realities of our situation, that take us to new levels that we once only dreamed that we could become. So I leave you with this tool and this invitation and ask you if you feel that little burst, that little opening, a little expansion, that little flutter of energy, that you join us and be a part of it. Love to have you. I already love you. Peace.